Good evening. This is now week 10 of Social Work 636, and the focus this week is on program development, program components, and program characteristics and budgeting. So let's go first to the introduction. And so the overview for this week talks about the theory of change and budgets in proposals. We'll cover how to articulate the theory of change as well as the characteristics of well-written proposals. The learning objectives are to articulate the characteristics of a good theory of change, to describe the components of a program budget, write a theory of change, and write a budget. The learning materials for this week are as follows. There are a number of readings, outside readings, and also readings from the text, chapter 10, 11, 12, and 13. There are also two media slides in addition to videos from the Children's Hospital on Philadelphia. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia covers program planning and evaluation and choosing community programs and interventions, and also evidence-based programs. So those are the two from CHOP. We are going to go over the budgeting slides and also a PowerPoint that covers chapter 10 and 11, which is more about performance measurement, monitoring, and program evaluation, and impact program evaluation and hypothesis testing. So before we do that, let's go to the assignments for this week. So now we're starting to get to the proposal writing, and week 10's assignment is on needs assessment, goals, and objectives. So this assignment is an important step towards the final assignment, which is to prepare a grant program proposal for a new program at your organization. Consider this a draft for your final proposal and utilize any instructor comments or feedback for your final proposal submission. This intermediate step is to prepare two important sections of your proposal. First is the statement of need, and this describes the problem you will address and includes the components listed below, written in APA narrative form, and then goals and objectives. And you can connect here to see examples. So your paper sections are as follows. You will have an introduction. That is a summary. So should include a sentence or two on each item below to describe the problem. What is the overall goal of the proposed project? Describe the targeted client population to be served, and describe why this problem is important to the social work profession's role in advocacy and empowerment in communities when addressing human rights violations and social, economic, and environmental justice on client systems. Next is the organizational and policy content. This is a discussion of any important contextual or background information that should be included. The kinds of information commonly placed here are, and you need at least two references, are as follows. What, if anything, your agency has done to address the problem to date? Does the agency currently address this problem or need? How many clients the agency currently serves? And are there any federal, state, or local policies that affect the problem clients? Try to identify at least one existing policy. You are then providing a problem description and characterization. And this is your evidence about the problem. It should describe the what and why of a proposal. This section attempts to understand why this project is needed. So also make sure that you're providing references in all these sections of your paper. So definitions and theory, your empirical data and evidence, and your program goals and objectives. Some important tips. Demonstrate the immediacy of the need without overselling your case. If appropriate, indicate how the community or client group has been involved in defining this problem and recommending responses. If possible, describe how the program might be replicated if it demonstrates that it works. And grant proposals come from agencies, not individuals. So it's not about I or me or what you would do. It is about your organization. Your statement of need is written in narrative form. Your goals and objectives are listed in list form. Remember, usually a goal has at least 2 or 3 objectives. So if you include more than one goal, you would have goal 1, goal 2, but you would have the objectives that refer to each goal. Your document should total 4 to 5 pages, not including your title page and references. You're using APA format. This is saying you don't need a title page for this assignment, but make sure all your sections are clearly titled, and your report must include necessary APA citations. So again, if you have questions about this, please let me know, but this is now starting to be the meat of your final proposal. Now we're going to look at the presentations this week on budgeting and then go next to looking at program evaluation, monitoring, etc. So we're going to look at organizations and program development and budgeting first. So the agenda is to describe the budgeting procedures, and the last page describes your class proposal requirements when it comes to the budget. So the budget is a component of the proposal where you provide your estimates of the cost of the services you are providing. As with all proposal components, you give the funder the information they want, but usually it includes a table around the estimated costs and any other likely revenues that will offset some of the costs. And then there is a budget narrative that explains the items in your budget. How does it fit into the proposal? Well, you have your title page, your abstract, your introduction, your statement of need, goals, and objectives that you will be writing this week, your procedures, then your budget and budget narrative, and then you are talking about your program evaluation, deliverables, and the appendices that are required. So what goes into that budget? First, a table or tables called a line item budget showing your estimated expenses and revenues for this program for the duration of the proposal. So what does this mean? You only show cost revenues connected to the proposed program, not your whole agency budget. You show only the cost revenues connected to the length of the proposal. So if it's 3 years, you're doing a budget for 3 years, not for years after that. Your funder may want some additional information, and you might be provided a form, but if not, the best way to make the table is by using Excel or Word. What goes into that budget? You provide a narrative statement that describes what is on the table, explanation of some of the costs and revenues, and any assumptions that you use that are important for the funder to know about. So we're going to look at the table first and then return to the narrative. Some assumptions. So budgets have been highly studied, and there are many ways to analyze the process, but there are a few assumptions. It is not how much money you want, it's how much the project costs that you put on paper. So you have to look at what this project costs, and to do that, you examine your entire project and think about every activity, worker, or material you need, as well as what you already have. And if you do not know what something costs, do the research. However much the project will cost, what you ask for in your budget can't exceed what the funder will pay, which is the maximum grant size. Always provide the budget in the format that the funder wants, and there is very often a requirement that your agency provides some revenue to offset the cost. And there are many ways to provide that revenue. Some additional assumptions. You can measure the value of something in two ways, either by cash or in kind. In kind means that you or someone else, your agency or someone else, is providing something other than cash. So it could be space, services, staff time, volunteer time, and they're adding this to the program value. And you can count the cash value of that something in your grant. So again, you can estimate the cost of volunteers, you can estimate the cost of space, and you can use that as a contribution to your budget. So below is the information is organized on a line item budget. Notice that it is organized by several levels, each which has a subtotal. So you have expenses, and there are subtotals. You have total expenses, and then you have revenues and where they are coming from. And if in doubt, you can always look at budgets on any proposal and get some idea as to how to construct your budget. Line item budget, there are expenses that are organized as either direct or indirect. If they are direct, they are costs that are needed, new to the program, and can be estimated. Direct costs are organized generally by the following categories: personnel, which is often your biggest cost, supplies and materials, equipment, consultant or contractual fees, fees for space, travel, and other. Budget categories have individual expenses called line items, and under them you should list a separate line item for all costs except for supplies can be grouped together, for example, or multiple purchases of the same item. Indirect costs are costs you already have to pay for, but you will be using more of with the new program and are therefore harder to estimate. For example, you are holding the new program in the building you already run, in which you already run other programs, but with the new program, you will be using more electricity, water, the time of the custodian, etc. So since you can't accurately estimate what those costs will be, a lot of budgets give you a formula so that you can estimate your indirect costs and include those in the budget. So line item budgets include your revenue, total budget requests, expenses minus the revenues that you expect. Here is a table that gives you an example of a line item budget. The budget narrative is a write-up that puts the line item budget into words. Not every single item, but you want the reader, your funder wants to know exactly what you're spending this money on. So how were your budget figures computed if you've got any unusual expenses or large ones? And you need a few sentences to give the funder some indication of why you're asking for those monies. Please read the guidelines for any budget. Consider the overall budget project, the overall project budget before you begin to develop individual budgets for each year. There are items that the funder might not fund, so don't include them in your budget. Outline the budget in the format that they request. Remember that the grant won't start for several months, and submit costs accordingly. Develop a good budget explanation and ensure that the budget coincides with the narrative and falls within the time frame. So for the class proposal, you're going to be submitting a budget as part of that final proposal. Now let's talk briefly about proposals, project design, methods, and the procedures section. So what is this section? This is a major component of the proposal. This is where you'll provide the detail about why you think your intervention will work, who is doing the intervention, who you are doing it to, and what you are doing to them. You're going to describe your theoretical reasoning and give a picture of the agency, your program task, your methods of service delivery, and the responsibility of key staff. The theoretical reasoning has been discussed in the readings, but this section includes your literature review or conceptual framework, should include the empirical evidence-based justification for your program. And the agency description describes your agency, including an analysis of your agency's policies currently in place that will help or hinder the new program task, who's doing what, how it's going to be delivered, and those key responsibilities. So how does it fit into your proposal? Again, you can go down. This is usually after your goals and objectives. So a well-written proposal will include your theoretical section. This is what we often call the literature review. Your agency description, again, your program task, and the responsibilities of key staff. Your theoretical section, this is where you're going to the library to get literature around the theory that is the basis for your program. Considerations: use the strongest evidence you can find and look for current literature, not literature that's 20 or 30 years old. Your agency description, again, here are distinctions as to what you should put in your description. Your program task and methods of delivery. Who are your clients? What will be your objectives? This should be linked to activities which should be linked to the objectives. How is your project going to accomplish those objectives? And discuss only those actions that support an objective. Responsibilities of staff. Who's going to do what? If you know the individuals, say who they are and describe their roles. Or if you're going to be hiring, describe job titles and their requirements. So writing a grant proposal is like playing a game. You have to play by the rules. Get the most recent guidelines, read them, and follow them. Be clear in your writing. You don't want to use fuzzy or inappropriate use of words. Avoid jargon all over the place. That's what it says in this slide. So buzzwords often work for you, but they might not provide good meaning to somebody reading your proposal. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about looking at evaluative methods, which have to be part of your proposal as well. This PowerPoint, covers chapters 10 and 11 in designing and managing programs, the text. And the first chapter looks at performance measurement, monitoring, and program evaluation. What's the link between the three? A strong link needs to exist between a human service agency's performance measurement, monitoring, and program evaluation systems and its information system. That connection involves specifying upfront during the planning process the data that needs to be available so that you will have it for the performance evaluation. Monitoring. It's defined as an assessment of the extent to which a program is implemented as designed and serves its intended group. Performance evaluation is defined as a social science technique that's applied to determining the workings and effectiveness of human service programs. It's concerned with determining the impact of a program. and it addresses a series of questions. Did the program work as intended? What results or accomplishments were achieved? What measurable impacts did the program achieve, and is the program cost effective? Program data requirements. There is coverage data, which provide feedback on the extent to which a program is meeting the community need and reaching its target population. There is equity data that specifically looks at specific sub-geographical areas of a community and subgroups in that community and looks at if they are being served. Process data provides feedback on the extent to which a program is implemented as designed. Effort data provides feedback on the amount and quality of services and products and the number of services completed. Cost efficiency data provide feedback on the cost of providing program services and products, including intermediate, final, and quality outputs. Results outcome data provide feedback on the extent to which a program achieves its intended results. Cost effectiveness data provide feedback on the cost of achieving those program results. And impact data, often seen as the most important data, provide information on what happened to clients as a result of participation in this program, and would this have happened if the program did not exist. Differentiating impact program evaluation from performance measurement. We look at frequency. Impact program evaluation is episodic, while performance measurement is ongoing. We look at issue. Impact program evaluation is frequently driven by specific stakeholder questions, while performance measurement is more general. And then lastly, attribution of outcomes. Impact program evaluation is concerned with determining if the program caused the result or is the result due to external factors. In performance measurement, attribution is generally assumed. Impact program evaluation continued. It attempts to demonstrate a cause and effect relationship between a program and the result. A successful program can demonstrate that it is successful, or if it's unsuccessful because of theory failure or because of program failure. If it's theory failure, there is an alignment between the program theory or its hypothesis and the implementation of the design, but the program still does not produce the desired result. If it's program failure, this occurs when there is misalignment between the program theory and its implementation. What are some research designs for impact program evaluation? We have the single groups, which serves as both the experimental and the comparison group. A single group could serve as the experimental group with a separate, distinct comparison group. Pre-test, post-test is an example of a single group design. You can have a non-equivalent comparison group, which begins to address the issue of internal validity, or you can have the randomized experimental design, which it's a random selection of participants to go to either that experimental group or the comparison group. There are a number of threats to internal validity. One is history. Events outside the program are impacting the scores of both the experimental and comparison groups. There is maturation. The passage of time impacts the group. Mortality, meaning dropout rate. Selection bias. Members of the experimental group and the comparison group are not really equal when we look at some important factors. Diffusion or imitation of the program. The comparison group members find out somehow about information that should only be known by the experimental group. Testing. The pre-test impacted the learning of the groups. And instrumentation. The pre-test implementation differentially impacted the groups. And this is from the chapters in Designing and Managing Programs in Effectiveness-Based Approach 6th edition. So with that, I look forward to reading your assignment this week, which really gets into a lot of the meat of the proposal. If you have any questions, please get to me as quickly as possible, and I hope you have a wonderful week.